work. So thank you for being here. 30 minutes, ready? I'm gonna kind of fly through this. Like I said, you'll get a copy of it, so don't worry. But it was fascinating to update this talk since the last time I gave it, and it sounds like you're all there, so I don't have to convince you. But for a lot of people who don't do social media, I was like, but LinkedIn is social media, but it's, you know, it's kind of a safer place to do it, or it's not a, it's a, I would say less toxic place to do it. But nearly 1 billion people are on it. In the US alone, there's almost 200 million. Daily users is still over 100 million in the US. So it is a very active platform. And the users on social, it's on LinkedIn, typically tend to be more educated, more affluent. They're not all working though. So I do want to kind of dissuade people who say it's only for professionals, that they should be on it. But it's one of the reasons I'm a fan of it. I just think it's low hanging fruit, and especially if you don't have any other digital presence, to take ownership of your LinkedIn profile is really important. It's free. You can control the narrative and story and tell it there. And LinkedIn works really well with Google, or Google really likes LinkedIn. So again, especially if you have an uncommon name and somebody Googles you, typically, if you don't have a big digital presence, your LinkedIn profile will come up. So I say to people, like, at least just make sure it's got accurate information, relevant information, updated information. Because I don't know about you all, but in this day and age, typically what you do is you Google somebody, or if you're about to meet with somebody, you want to get the backstory. So it's really imperative just to sort of take ownership of that profile. I think this is an easier sell than it used to be. A lot of people would be like, okay, I updated it, I have a new job. They'd set it and forget it. And I hope by the end of today, you'll say, all right, maybe I should check it on a more regular basis. So we're just going to walk through some steps I believe are really important. This one again needs to be more important because a lot of people had the egg picture. It's less of an issue now, but I do like to throw my husband under the bus, who didn't originally have his photo up there. And I just would say, you've got to get, make sure you've got a photo that speaks to who you want to be on your LinkedIn profile. If you don't, LinkedIn will penalize you and be like, this person's not serious. It also sends the message that, like, you're not as serious or relevant as you want to be. Where really the next step, and I find people tend to, I just said Lashana now. Beach goes and I was like, I'm looking at Lashana. So take a deep breath, compose myself, right? Beyond the picture, I ask people to really think about what we call the headline, and maximizing your headline, and that is literally the description or the title that goes under your name. And again, what used to happen, and more so in corporate, is people would have vice president or vice president, executive director of communications. Well, if you didn't see the company they were working for, you didn't know what that meant. For people in this room and in our virtual audience, I'm getting a sense more of you are less corporate and kind of entrepreneurial, or if you're affiliated with a company, you still have figured out how to use your headline to tell what you do. Christine, I know you're in real estate. Linda, I know you're in the wellness and fitness space. Elizabeth, I know about design, right? Like you would use designer in your title. But it's an opportunity for you to use this little space to tell people who you are in a very succinct way. It's also the information that follows you around LinkedIn. So if you comment somewhere, or somebody just gets a little snapshot, all they're going to see basically is your face and your name and your headline. So optimizing that headline for what you want to be found for or known for is really important. And again, it doesn't have to have anything to do with your title. So I think people give some consideration to that. And one of the ways I say, if it's working or not is if you're looking for work, if your profile in general is optimized, LinkedIn will be sending you jobs that are relevant, or you can always sort of see when you search yourself, who are they putting you in the same space with? And that's another indicator, like, okay, that makes sense that I'm showing up in this space. But it's kind of one of the key pieces that I think people don't spend enough time with, in terms of the headline. One of the new features that LinkedIn has offered, and by new, I mean, I think within the past year or so, is they have a feature called Creator Mode. And this was Microsoft's way. Microsoft owns LinkedIn, for those of you who don't know that, but I think this was LinkedIn and Microsoft's way of trying to become more of a content platform and make people more discoverable. I think it's their way of acknowledging that a lot of us in the solopreneur, entrepreneur, thought leadership space could make LinkedIn work better for us. So if you turn on creator mode, and if you have it, it just kind of below your name, it'll give you that feature to say turn on creator mode. What that means is a couple things. One, it's showing the topics that you want to post about. So basically, I can't remember if it gives you 4 or 5 like hashtags. So in my situation, I haven't turned it on yet, which I meant to do before today. But anyway, this is what it looks like. If I did it, I would say it talks about digital communications or thought leadership, or it's kind of the space that you're in that you want to be found for. And let's say if somebody wanted to hire you to talk or write a blog post, what would you want to be talking about? Again, it's a great opportunity for keywords. Again, the more you put in, the more you're telling LinkedIn, this is how you want to be found, and this is what you want to be known for. The other feature is it switches you to the automatic default becomes follow versus connect. Again, kind of thinking about for those of you who might be the Facebook page versus the Facebook profile, somebody doesn't have to be connected to you. If they click to follow, you don't have to accept it. So it gives people opportunity for you to build a following without necessarily being connected. Because for a lot of people, I know there's this weird thing of somebody wanted to connect, I don't really know who they are, or you as a person might want to follow somebody, but don't feel it's appropriate to connect with them. So the connection means you to agree to be connected. Following means you can be followed or somebody can follow you, and you don't have to accept it or do whatever. So it's a way again of growing your community in a kind of one step of a relationship removed. Most of you are nodding. Does that make kind of sense? If you still want to connect, you click on the 3 buttons and connect with somebody. So it doesn't mean you can't connect, but this becomes the default mode. Christine, here.
Well, I was just gonna say, like you would follow somebody like Sir Richard Branson. You're not gonna connect with him. He's not gonna connect back, but you want to follow him to see what he's posting, what he does.
Yeah, and it's made it easier for those of us that aren't Sir Richard Branson to have followers.
Right.
For people who don't know us, but they're like, oh, I want to see what they're posting about.
Exactly.
And then also, in doing this, you're kind of you're accepting the mantle of, okay, I'm going to become more of a creator, I'm going to put more content. So it also kind of elevates your content if you're stepping into this role. So I'll be curious when you go back to LinkedIn to see who of your peer group or your connections have done this or haven't.
Christine has. I just saw that, but
I've done what?
You're a creator.
Yes,
I say, but where did you say that happens?
In your profile, I would say it's just sort of 2 or 3 notches down. And again, your LinkedIn profile is going to look different because when you're working on it, it gives you all these different prompts. But there's a little toggle that says turn on creator mode. Okay, when you're in your own profile. Most of you, I think, are here more focusing on your business and marketing versus open, looking for jobs. But again, LinkedIn, I'm just going to acknowledge LinkedIn's made it very easy to sort of raise your hand and say, hey, I'm looking for work, by turning on these kind of open to work options. I'm not getting a sense. I'm going to look at you, Nicole, like if you're ever looking for a job. But again, it keeps evolving in terms of trying to make it easier for people. Can you look for a job without having this on? Yes, especially if you're working at a company and you don't want anybody to know. But again, knowing that these features are there and available. The next piece I feel very strongly about that sometimes gets overlooked in your LinkedIn profile is the summary or the about section. In the olden days where we worked on our resumes, this was the objective or goals or whatever. This is a little bit different in that it's your turn to tell your story in a succinct way. And again, fill your LinkedIn profile with keywords and information that you want to be found for. So a couple things to think about. One, when you look at somebody's profile, you only see these first 2 to 3 lines. So I always say to people, you might have a beautiful summary, but if your first 2 lines don't hook me in, I'm not necessarily, well, one, I might not even look regardless. So you really want to hook somebody in with your, first or second line. 2, I really feel strongly that you make it as first person as possible, as opposed to, Kristen Hawker is a wonderful advocate for, it sounds much more personal of, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is the impact I've had, this is where I shine. So thinking about it in the first person is important. And you can be as robust beyond those 3 lines as you want. I like to say, make it readable. If you want to put in bullet points, put in bullet points, because people, as you know, don't have a lot of time. If there are specific skills you want to include in there, we're going to talk more about skills, but skills, geographic locations, if you had results. Again, I sometimes say you can cram a lot of this up there and go lighter on your experience section. It just depends on what you're looking for. And again, realizing sometimes people never even scroll past your name, description, headline, and the about. You hope they get to your experience, but you can't necessarily rely on it. So, and I'm going to honor, this can keep changing, and this doesn't have to be perfect the first time. It's also not easy to do it if you haven't, it's you basically putting on paper, who am I, what do I stand for? And if you're new to this model, or you're still kind of running a business, I'm just gonna say, it doesn't come out of you. And even with ChatGPT, like we need to, it needs some thought, and you can experiment, and it evolves. And I even include contact information, again, making it as easy as possible if I want to be found, for somebody to reach out to me and not have to click through to my, contact information. Got it. Okay. I didn't skip one, did I? Oh, that's a backward. No. Take me back. Thank you. There, I think that was the way you said it. Okay, there we go. This one. I was like, wait, we jumped a skill. If we were working down your profile, what we have skipped, I'm going to get to though, is now what we're seeing is LinkedIn want to show how active you're being on the platform. Like, what did you post? Did you write an article? Did you like or share something? We're going to come back to that. I'm just going to honor that as you're literally like scrolling down in your own profile. That's what you would see next. But I think for a lot of people, if they're thinking of LinkedIn equals my resume, what do I need to do? I want to talk about the experience part. And so I tend to be on the less is more. Back, I don't know when they quit doing it, but you used to be able to, LinkedIn will tell you like, you're almost there, your profile's almost complete. I had a very complete profile without ever having more information than the name of the company, my title, and the years I worked there. Again, I'm here to try and relieve you of some of that stress of, oh my gosh, I have to put a million asterisks and results and all the things I did. I'm here to say, especially if it's not relevant to what you do now, don't worry about it. Just make sure you've got the dates, you've got the companies, you've got your titles. Hopefully those titles help tell the narrative that you're in, but it doesn't need to be, 4 paragraphs for each bit of your experience. People don't have, time to read that. The other thing I want to point out that's slightly new is now, because LinkedIn's also starting to act as a, its own job board and doing a lot of filtering and matching and trying to matchmaking, is it will give you the opportunity to show where your skills, some of your skills shine. So we're going to get to skills in a second, but what now happens is it will highlight for you some of the skills you used in those different experiences. And not only that, you also get the opportunity in your other experience, be it volunteering or be it board experience, to say, I actually use these skills. So again, for people who are in a pivoting position, you might be using skills in one place that are different than the skills in the other place. And LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to acknowledge that. The volunteering section, again, comes slightly down below your experience, but I brought it in there to say, all experience is experience, and again, this is where keywords and skills kind of matter and can be used. Everybody still with me on experience? Okay. Okay. Oh, that is, I don't know why that looks so wonky, sorry. Undating your profile is another kind of update that I am learning about in terms of also, if you think about your LinkedIn profile from a standpoint of going through filters, which again, I'm not sure most of you are, but just to also be aware of ageism and bias when somebody's looking at your LinkedIn profile. So and this was news to me in the past year because I was very diligent about my dates and everything else. The kind of new way to think about, should I do this, should I not? I don't want to be discriminated against if I'm of a certain age, or maybe of a certain age too older or younger, is removing dates from your, from education. So remove dates if you are over 30 plus. It is totally acceptable for you to not have the dates on your profile. Like I said, this was news to me, but I did it. I thought, why not? That is not required. Removing dates for your experience is a little trickier because if you put a job on there, it wants you to put the dates. So again, I say, I left my Deloitte on there. I'm totally dating myself now, but I hadn't figured out a way to sort of, I still might go in and fix it. And what's recommended is you can go on your last job and add a section to say other experience and just put wherever else you worked. I haven't done that yet, but take it off on for the education. The other thing I want to say about that is a lot, from what I'm understanding, is again, if you're applying for jobs, some of these filters, I can't necessarily LinkedIn itself, they're interested in hearing about 12 to 15 plus years of experience. So they'll automatically start filtering information. So, by keeping the dates on, if you're looking for certain things, that's one of the reasons people take them off, to try and get through the first round of, filters or job search engines to do that. Again, I'm not so sure it's completely relevant for this audience, but it's just kind of the way LinkedIn is operating now, and important to know. Okay. Highlighting your skills. This part again has also changed if you haven't been on your LinkedIn profile lately. What it kind of did was help you figure out your skills by what you had described. Other people could endorse you for your skills. Now LinkedIn is actually giving you the opportunity to let you more control this story. So again, if you were a pharmacist before and now you're a health coach, letting you let your new skill set shine is really important. So like I said, as we saw before, in some of your other jobs, it'll let you say, yes, I did email marketing, or yes, I did design work, or yes, I did customer relationship building. And it actually even lets you control the story, because what used to happen, and I think still happens, is people would endorse you for stuff they knew you for, but that might not be the stuff that you're doing now. So when you go in and update your skills section, I think it lets you have up to 50. And again, what I'm hearing is nobody else can see all 50. Why not go in and claim as many of those that are relevant to you, to just keep feeding the beast of LinkedIn with keywords. And then for the ones you really want, it'll even let you, when you go in, prioritize what the most important skills are to you. So when they show up under your skills and endorsements, it shows up. Again, this is evolved partly for you to control the narrative. This is also partly for LinkedIn to say, great, you have these 8 skills. I see this job description. You're a perfect match for this job. Sorry. So again, thinking about it from a job search way is slightly different than what we might be doing. But I think, again, for those of you who are looking for B2B or looking for clients, making sure it's known that you understand, in my situation, email marketing or social media or digital media, real estate, teaching and instruction and education, corporate speaking, taking again ownership of this free territory for what is most important to you. After your skill set is the recommendations, and that's still a very solid part of, the LinkedIn, part of your LinkedIn profile. And again, I consider this like when you used to have referrals, this is kind of the LinkedIn version of recommendations. I used to have Christine's on it. Used to be part of my selection. And what I say to people is, a few ways to think about it. One, if this is new to you, I say to people, go think about somebody you would give a recommendation to and do that so you understand what that process feels like. In thinking about it from a standpoint of, how do I get them if people aren't already volunteering to get them, is especially, again, for those of you who might be wrapping up with a client or you worked with a client and they say, part of making it part of your wrapping up or your offboarding process. Hey, if you already have some built-in survey or how did we do or whatever, if you're really happy, could I ask you to give this? Or if somebody does give you glowing review, you say, so great, fantastic. Would you mind posting that on LinkedIn? I mean, there's just some subtle ways that are in your work process that make it, kind of an easier or more opportune time to get them. But the other advice I give in this section is sometimes people are like, yeah, what do you want me to say? So I've been in a situation where like, I'd love if you talk about this, or would you like me to draft something and then you can edit it? I haven't done that in either one of these for the record, but I think in corporate, and again, in the mention of corporate, what I would say is sometimes I know in corporate, it's tricky. There are policies in bigger organizations about what they can and can't do in terms of recommendations. But I'm always surprised when I go to somebody's profile and I think, you've been working for 20 years and you don't have any recommendations? I mean, come on, between volunteer or something, somebody surely has something nice to say about you. But I also think it might also be the knowledge of not knowing that this is an important piece of your profile. Okay. All the other stuff we kind of talked about was like what you want to do on your profile that you should have filled in your profile. And I'm slightly shifting to great. And you did all that. Now, what do you want to do to also stay active and also tell LinkedIn you're relevant and give LinkedIn again these indicators of show my profile, please. I'm a legitimate LinkedIn user, and that is growing your connections. So we talked about having people follow you, but the real meat of this is actually having connections on LinkedIn. And the magic number with LinkedIn is 500. So once you hit 500, you're 500 plus. Again, as we talked about the followers, if you have 6,000 followers, your followers show up, not your connections. So you can still see kind of how robust somebody's profile is when you can see their followers. But the connections are the piece that also then make your network more robust and make your network more robust to others, because the more connections you have, i.e. first connections, then the more that gives you opportunity to have second and third connections. And so, again, for people who are more in the 101 starting out stage, like, I have 150, what do I do? I say, just get started and make it part of your task or, one of your weekly marketing routines to reach out to 10 people a week on LinkedIn. I suspect in this day and age, you're going to be surprised how many people are on there, and you don't need to sit down and get to 500 in one go, but it kind of becomes an organic process. It's a great way to practice by going on and making connections. You'll suddenly start getting a feel for how LinkedIn works. But I now even say this to the college kids, which used to be more of a sell, but it's not hard for them to have 500 connections. And I think they're now realizing the importance of this as well. What I do say is ideally, don't just say, hey, I'd like to connect with no context. Typically, if you say you want to connect, you get the opportunity to write a note. I really like it if somebody's written a note. If somebody wants to connect with me and I don't have the context of why, I sometimes, before I say yes, will go back and say, thank you so much for reaching out. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing or why you're interested in connecting. Just again, I'm a little close to the vest about my connections. I mean, I'd love to say I have 5,000, but I also don't want to be in the situation if somebody calls and says, hey, could you introduce me to, or hey, do you know this person? that I don't have context to talk about somebody, but on this, I also give advice of, if you're in launch mode and selling a new product and you want it, the more the merrier, that might be your mode. You might be happy to just go gangbusters and, you know, go in the stratosphere. If you're looking for a job, you might be a little more accepting of, I'm gonna talk to as many people as I possibly can and connect with everybody, you know, so I think you have to figure out where you are, what you want LinkedIn to do for you, and what's going on in your world right this minute, to make, you know, and I've had people, I've talked to people who said, I used to be in sales, I've got to get people, you know, now not so much. I mean, you know that you're not using LinkedIn for a different reason. The next piece, I think, where LinkedIn has moved, but I'm not sure everybody has moved with it, is actually engaging on the platform, right? Like, so you set your beautiful profile, you got all the right keywords, and you're growing your connections, then what? And I just say you can't just let it sit there, because if you're not either, you know, looking at your feed that kind of now looks like a Facebook feed, don't be afraid of that, but you know, it looks like a Facebook feed, and seeing what people are posting and sharing, you know, some people can just, I call them, you can be a lurker and just occasionally like and comment. Or the next step is actually to post and share things that are going on in your world or your business or your company. And there's a ton of content. I don't ever think of LinkedIn being a place of like, all right, what am I going to say now? I mean, there's enough on that profile for you just to, I mean, there's enough other things people are sharing. There's enough in the news. There's enough of the events that you're going to that I think anybody could easily think about 1 to 2 things to post on LinkedIn a week, and it'd be authentic, real, you know, and it doesn't even have to be about you. Like, Christine, you're a great celebrator of other people's content. If you're a fan of HAYVN, HAYVN has amazing content, just, you know, resharing that, or celebrating your peers or friends' promotions or jobs or outrageous stories, you know, that are relevant to what's going on in your industry that you have insight and point of view on. You know, you could post and never talk about yourself or your company, and I think still have vital contributions to make, you know, in LinkedIn. So this is more talking about posting and engaging. You can actually write articles on LinkedIn if you don't have your own blog. And another thing that LinkedIn loves is if you actually do videos. So video engagement is quite high, and they want to stay relative and competing with these other video platforms. So I think, sorry, I keep pointing to you, Christine. I know you've done some. I've done a few where you can do them live and like interview people and have your own little interview show on LinkedIn. LinkedIn again tends to favor some of the video content. It tends to open right up. The other beautiful thing is, even if you can post, you know, if you do video and you post it, it's always there on your platform. I use the third-party platform to do it live, so you can literally, I can invite you to come, you know, watch this conversation. Again, it still stays. This was this conversation I had with Patrick about SEO. It's on my, it's there, right? It's on my, you can go hear that conversation. It's a bit like listening to the HAYVN podcast. So if you're kind of moving into the 102 or the 201 level, I would say think about how you might be able to use video on LinkedIn in a relevant way. Sorry. And then a third, I mean, a final piece is, you know, we're now getting into the lower hanging fruit and less important stuff, but still make sure that you're either following people in your interest space or companies or your schools. It's just these other interesting ways for you to differentiate yourself. I think you've heard the story, Christine. I know somebody who was applying for a job, very corporate, but he had put down here that he was interested in remote control airplanes. And because he put that, that was like part of the conversation that got him the job, because basically they were talking to 3 people, similar, you know, and they got all excited about their remote control airplane conversation. And, you know, had he never put that, it was just a point of distinction. So I'm not sure I have like scuba diving on mine, but between, you know, where you went to school or, you know, where you volunteer and what's important to you, I think that's a piece not to be missed. How are we doing on time? Oh, okay, almost.
You're good.
Bonus. I used to put this at the top and people's eyes would glaze over, so I put it in the back to acknowledge that when you have your LinkedIn profile, it typically gives you a default URL. In other words, it gives you a default link that may or may not have your name in it, or but it typically is like linkedin.com/AXK. When you're editing your profile, you can actually go and claim your own. If you have an unusual name like me, believe it or not, I can just go in and be /Nancy Shue. If you are Jane Smith or, Joe Brown, and your name is, this is where you can go in and potentially put a middle initial, or, if Christina, what do you have?
Christina Lennox.
Well, okay, well, yours is.
I know, so.
But let's say you're in real estate, or you're always gonna be in Connecticut, you could be CT. I put Matt's in here from a million years ago because he is, he was Matt of all media, because, Matt Shea was a very common name. So this is kind of next level-y stuff in LinkedIn, but again, if you have a common name and you want to differentiate yourself, or you're in an industry, you want to kind of raise your hand and be like, I am Elizabeth Stewart in design, that would be a way to do that. So that's kind of a bonus thing, but I like for people to know that's an option. And there we go. So now we're open for questions. We can go back. My email's in here and we will send this to you, but I want to now open it up for questions. You guys are so patient. Usually I do questions in between. Questions here? Like, there's a lot of nodding. That's a lot.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question. So LinkedIn was relatively new when I was working, and then I took a break for motherhood. And, obviously social media is a big part of life, and that's for personal. I have a tendency to feel intimidated by LinkedIn because of the professional. How do you not overthink what you're putting? Like this whole concept of posting once or twice a week, for an overthinker.
Okay. You're talking about posting. You're not talking about how you portray your experience or your skills.
But time towards the end,
Okay.
where you're engaging.
Look, you're working at HAYVN.
Well, I know.
You could share, but again, HAYVN has so much great content. You could literally share one of HAYVN's posts a week, and that would be totally relevant. Posting pictures from last night on your own with your point of view.
Okay.
Information about like being a community manager, the power of being a community manager, and how important people skills are in this day and age of AI and technology. Like, think about the things that are important to you that you do every day, and you could then share in a way that again is relevant to you, but doesn't feel, kind of spammy and everything else. But I would think, again, just where you are now, there's an abundance of opportunity. You could celebrate every other person who's in here. You know what I mean? Like, I just saw this presentation, or, I met this new person, or, you've got a lot of opportunity with just by who you are.
Absolutely, just take a picture of Nancy in front of that and say another great presentation at there's so much you can do.
You can just be, and the other thing I say to companies is it's very hard because most people want to engage with people, right?
Right.
So there's a great chance people might follow you to learn more about HAYVN than they would by following HAYVN. So you're actually doing a service to HAYVN, as is Felicia or Malou or all of us, if we share content about HAYVN, because it's a huge step for somebody to go and follow a company. Like, somebody would out of curiosity, or they might not know us, but it's much more fun to learn about an entity through the people you know than it is through, following that company. Does that help? Okay, more, Linda?
So what's the difference between premium versus free? Because I always get a thing like upgrade to premium.
So there are.
And you have to.
Yeah, and I should have started, thank you, that's a great question. I should have started with that. This is all assuming you are in the free,
Okay.
unpaid, no premium, no nothing zone. This is like using it organically. These are all, and then I also say, do all this first before you even think about premium. Premium comes in a lot of different ways. There's the premium if you're looking for a job. There's premium if you're trying to hire a job. There's premium if you're trying to actually like promote your business. So it'll ask you kind of what's your intention.
Okay.
I think the biggest feature why people do it, I would say in this room, and are you a premium member?
I'm not, I was, and I'm on here all the time. I just found I didn't need it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Deb Burns is saying, has anyone realized a strong return on investment
So For the
from
premium.
doing the premium
So
membership.
the ways I've seen it used or widely relevant is two things. One, it sometimes lets you go a little bit incognito. So with your premium, you can slightly disguise your profile and be nosy and not be discovered if you're a premium member. That's one perk. The other perk is it gives you the opportunity to reach out to people in your base who are not, kind of second degree or third degree connections. So if you do want to go reach that potential investor or potential client or whatever,
Okay.
premium kind of buys you that access. So it kind of buys you access in one capacity and it buys you a little bit of anonymity and exclusivity in another. So I think if you're really in a fundraising mode or a building your client list mode, getting followers, I mean, I wouldn't do this for getting followers organically. Those are the two reasons people do it.
And a little hack from that, if you want to follow somebody who you're not connected with at all, if they're in a group, if you become part of that group, you now have access to everybody in that group.
Yeah, and I mentioned groups, I didn't actually highlight, but I do find like you and da are in the same group, this is what they're talking about.
Okay.
So, and I think again, turn it on, try it, see what you like, but it's a big hit. I mean, it's somewhere, I think the free month is free, but then it gets up to $30, $40, $50 a month.
Oh, it starts at 99.
Now?
Yeah, it's 99 a month. And again, you.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
so
depending,
do all this
don't
organic
know
first.
Right.
Yeah,
Is it you
it's
might
always
try?
prompts when
Yeah.
I go on.
Yeah, great question.
So-
Thank you, Courtney.
I think you also, I don't know which one you can send messages, in-mail messages to
Yes,
people
yes.
and do some marketing
You
that
do get
way.
more.
Well, and sorry, that was the
Yeah.
thing, like, you can't message people you're not connected to, so this is why, or this gives you the ability to message people that you aren't connected to, sorry, in my brain, that's what it, but yeah, so it kind of buys you access.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
Oh, I had a question.
yes,
Do you have any recommendations on connecting with people that were already in our network? For example, people that I went to college and grad school with, they don't necessarily know about my business and my company, but I would want to reach out to them. So like messaging without being super salesy, but kind of just letting them know.
100%. I
Like
mean,
a brand new business, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I always go with just the authentic sort of like, oh my gosh, found you on LinkedIn, or comment about something they're doing. Didn't know you were doing this, or so excited to discover you're doing this. That's fascinating. I'm just, I have my own new business and I'm building up my LinkedIn network. Would love to connect. And I think totally authentic. Again, I think doing it out of left field and you haven't talked to a person in 20 years, might feel a little bit different. And it depends on the person receiving it, right? Like, for the most part, if I know someone in college and they hit me up, I'm like, sure, that's fine. I can say the context is cool, but I think being very authentic. For people who are really shy, I say, throw your marketing guru under the bus and say, I've been told by, my marketing person or my publisher or my new boss that I have to build my LinkedIn profile. So I'm reaching out, you know what I mean? So if that feels uncomfortable, that doesn't strike me.
No,
You
that doesn't.
You just see them cringing when I bring up the connection part, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. And I say, just then say, you have to do it because somebody told you have to do it and it's cringy and you hate it, but like, do it anyway. Is that you, Elizabeth? I'm trying to read your face over there.
You can also just say, how are you?
Yes.
It always comes back to I'm fine, or
Tell me what you're doing.
right, exactly. And then they'll say, how are you? Oh, thanks for asking. I just started my new business.
And I think even if the profile's not closed, you probably can see stuff that they've been posting or sharing that you can do a baby step of commenting on or liking. And then be like, oh, I saw you posted about this. Like, making it about them is typically a great way to turn the lights on.
So-
Yes.
Okay, so posting and commenting. One goes to everybody and the other one goes just to the person.
Great question. So if you post something, let's say it's an article, something about HAYVN, or it's a link, or it's an article, right? Like, then the people who follow you or are connected to you can see it. If you comment on something that, let's say, Felicia has posted, then anybody who can see Felicia's posts can see that, as well as your audience can see that you commented on something Felicia said. So it's the kind of spidery way that suddenly I've discovered somebody in Felicia's world that I might not know about. It's a way for somebody in Felicia's world to discover you because you commented. And again, sorry, I keep being Christine. Christine, she's a master of this. I mean, she does it in such an authentic, sincere way, but Christine's great about being genuine and commenting on things and sharing things that just is so lovely that I'm sure it helps build her network.
Thanks.
Did that make sense to you? So like the difference between those two, you posting something versus you commenting on somebody else's. Those are two slightly different audiences.
So it sounds like it's better to comment.
It's great to comment, but you also want to see that, I mean, that's one form of engagement. The next one is also then putting yourself out there and sharing stuff that you're doing. I think that also comes with a slight weight of, okay, you're putting your stuff out there as well. In terms of visibility, yeah, the commenting is a great way to start. And I say to people, like, just start that way, comment, just thumbs up. I mean, they're kind of these degrees of like, you know, you can actually just thumbs up, hand, insight, you can actually comment. You can reshare somebody's stuff. That's another thing I think for you all with HAYVN is just resharing what HAYVN's putting out with your, like, this is the best event, or I need you to know about HAYVN Hatch, it's the best thing since sliced bread, right? So you can actually reshare other people's content too. But there's some stuff only you could put out, you know, or that you might have a point of view on, that I don't think you should miss that opportunity. But the babies, I mean, the first step would be commenting. Awesome question. Anybody else? I'm aware of our time.
And Deb just said as well, I have also found that there's been an exponential increase in followers versus connections.
Yes. And they just they shifted this model, I think, to make it easier for people to build community without having to have the actual connection. And I'm just thinking Deb has a lot of great content out too. Right? Anyone? You guys are so great.
Wonderful.
Great. Well, I'll happily email this, like I said, to kind of walk through the steps if that's helpful.
Yeah.
And